Quiet, quiet, friends. I have a tale to tell before the tavern closes tonight. I have come a very long way and seen so many places. I've heard many stories, and I am happy to be here now to share them with you. So, gather round. Tonight I will tell you of a group of the most gifted ne'er-do-wells to ever walk our earth, or at least the bravest. This story begins in Ghisemer, a massive walled city in the east where magic is banned and hatred of those with the gift is inescapable. Every year, hundreds of those who live in the east wander to the coast to board mighty ships, sailing across the channel around the Isle of Malvana to the old continent, where demons rise and breed, protecting the wounded Lord of Sorrow where he sleeps. Ghisemer is home to many thousands of people. It is called the Shackled City as it is shaped like a pair of manacles. One wall contains the nobility, their castles, their homes, their colleges, their church, and the second wall holds the rest of the city, where the people live in their tiny homes, running their tiny shops, living their tiny lives. On this side of the wall was born a young woman, with an eye for mischief and no gold to her name. Funnily enough, her name was the Gisetra word for wealth, Fortaine. Fortaine's mother was the madam of the finest brothel in the city. Her father was a soldier who died fighting demons across the sea, and by the time she was 11, she was out on the streets alone. Those who asked how it happened are often met with mixed stories. Some say her mother's brothel burned down. Others say that Fortaine ran away from home after deciding she disapproved of the business. I have seen her mother's brothel, and it still stands, and Fortaine now runs that business with pride and excellence. So no one truly knows why she started stealing, just that she did, and that she did it incredibly. She learned to pick pockets and locks, how to run through the streets cutting purses from belts and escape from the city watch. She knew every corner of every street and every way to climb to the rooftops. She was no killer. Her knife had only ever tasted twine and fabrics, but that didn't stop her from committing the occasional act of mugging or intimidation. It was not honest work, but it filled her belly and fit her with skills. There are many thieves in the Shackled City, so Fortaine had the boon of anonymity. Rarely would she be arrested, and even more rarely would she go to prison. Until one rainy day, when Fortaine was 19, she had cut the leather purse from the belt of a noblewoman as she was buying a fine antique from a man with a curly mustache. Down the street she ran, slipping on the wet stones. She lunged to climb on top of a balcony, but as her hands clasped the stone ledge, her fingers slipped. She hit the ground with a sickening crack, and as she tried to stand, she saw the sword lowering to her throat. Fortaine was trapped. As the watchman prepared to pick her up and arrest her, the man with the mustache arrived and demanded the right to punish her be passed to him. The watchman agreed, calling the man Wilhelm the Artisan. Ghisemer often allowed for this to happen, for the victim to punish the accused to whatever extent they deemed fit. Fortaine was certain she was about to meet her death as Wilhelm the Artisan dragged her into his shop and slammed the door behind him. His stern, mustached face glared down at Fortaine, and she tried to struggle her wrist out of his grasp. He raised a hand as though to strike her, and Fortaine flinched and dropped to her knees. To her surprise, the man began to laugh, a deep, elated laugh. He told her that he was impressed. She was quite quick and gifted for a thief so young. Fortain was taken aback by this. Not only did the man not immediately harm her, but he seemed quite pleased. She asked him what was going on, as she looked around his shop of curios and rarities, and he smiled and cracked his fingers. Wilhelm told Fortain that he had work for her, if she wanted it. A single heist paying 130 crowns. Her eyes lit up at the promise of so much money, but then they quickly returned to normal. She asked him what she would be stealing, and he simply shook his head. Wilhelm told her that in the castle of the king of Gisera, a delivery would soon be made. 3 large wooden crates. If she could bring him all 3, the coin was hers. Fortain debated, asking how he believed a girl her size could carry 3 large crates out of a castle unseen. He retorted that she would only be emptying 2 of the crates and bringing the last one to him, and of course she wouldn't be alone. He led her to a back room where 3 other thieves sat around a large oak table. The 4 eyed each other suspiciously, but Wilhelm continued to speak as though nothing was happening. On the table was several drawings of the castle, as well as a painted green lion that Wilhelm claimed was the seal they would find on the boxes they were to rob. Jorah, the oldest of the thieves, with messy brown hair and a set of potions hanging from his hip, asked how they would know which ones to open and which ones to bring with them, and Wilhelm simply smiled, stating, "You will know it when you see it." Around the room, the other thieves looked over the drawings of the castle. Wilhelm told them that the contents of each box should weigh roughly 8 stone, and the box they were to bring with them should weigh around 21 stone. They began to debate how to get that box out. If all of them lifted together, they could move it, but no one would be watching for guards. They resigned themselves to tie ropes to the crate and lower it out the window, slowly and gently lowering it to the ground as a group. One of them would climb down after it to protect it, while the others made it back outside. It seemed a simple enough plan, but Fortain still felt as though something was off. She could see in the faces of the others that they could feel it too. Over the coming days, she would know them all better. There was Jorah, who was an amateur mage, who would use his magic to aid in the heist and protect them all from harm. Mercedes, a bandit by trade, who would serve as their muscle and defender once inside. Lastly, Helene, who was not much of a thief, but her charm and wit would serve to get them out of situations with ease. They prepared quickly over those days, gathering the necessary ropes and tools and information they would need to get in and out without being seen. Helene snuck into the castle to better understand the layout, using her unique charm to fool the guards into thinking she brought Crawling Cough into the castle, ensuring that many of the soldiers would not be present in the following days. Mercedes also worked to make sure the number of soldiers present would be limited, as she would visit the nearby taverns and give a proper thrashing to any and all that Helene had marked as castle guardsmen. Jorah spent those days speaking to the mice and rats that called the city home, sending them to the castle to serve as his eyes and ears within the walls. One of them even bringing a special necklace that Jorah had made with it. It would help him later. Fortain stole a heavy keyring off of one of the king's staff, ensuring them access to the study when they got inside, her hands deftly cutting the ring from the servant's hip while he purchased his daily bread and slipping away before he was any the wiser. When the fateful day arrived, Fortain asked Wilhelm what they were stealing, and again he shook his head. "The money is what matters. My goals are unimportant," he said. Fortain was thoroughly annoyed, but decided to go along with it. If what she was stealing was worth more than what Wilhelm had offered, she would just steal it again and sell it to someone else. Night fell quickly, and the 4 thieves began to move. Fortain rushed over the rain-covered rooftops, darting from wall to wall like a shadow. Mercedes was dressed as a guard, wearing a uniform stolen for her by Helene. Helene, of course, posed as a servant again, and walked through the halls of the castle. Jorah meditated under the moon, focusing on the necklace he had given the mouse to smuggle into the castle days prior, and soon his body began to flicker and pulse, until he opened his eyes and found himself standing in the castle. Fortain reached the outer wall of the people's city and rapidly began to climb it, her tiny frame launching from spot to spot as she tried to reach the top before running out of strength. When she reached the ledge, she could see the long wall connecting the people's city to the Lord's city, and her energy renewed. She began to run across the long wall, ducking the sight of guards, using shadows and the rain as her cloak, occasionally cutting the coin purse off of a guard's belt just to prove that she could. As Fortain continued her run, Helene came across a problem. A particularly perceptive guard spotted her and demanded she halt. He claimed he had never seen her before. She turned and tried her best to convince him that she had been working here for a long time. He was still feeling suspicious, no matter what she said. She started to stammer and fight to regain control of the conversation, but sometimes the act of deception simply does not work. The guard drew his sword and went to yell for his allies, but Mercedes came barreling out of a nearby room and slammed the man into a wall, kneeing him in the cheek to knock him unconscious on the floor. The two then stormed up the stairs towards the king's personal study. While this was going on, Jorah had finished teleporting into the castle walls, a wave of sickness and nausea passing over him as his body relocated across town to the necklace the mouse had so kindly brought into the castle for him. After turning up his lunch, he brushed back his messy hair and began to stroll quietly through the castle. Soon he reached the throne room balcony, and from there he could see the king and his advisors speaking candidly in the early night candlelight. Fortain continued her sprint across the wall, soon reaching the outer wall of the Lord's city, and looking down at the opulent houses and castles, cathedrals and spires, she gave a soft smile as the rain began to slow down. Her shadowed form now only lit by stars and distant torchlight. She stole to one side and then off the side of the wall, managing to just barely catch onto a corner gargoyle, dragging herself up into a tower window. With that, she was inside the castle and off towards the study. Helene and Mercedes continued their climb. Helene tried to charm her way past the guards with soft smiles and coy laughter, and if that didn't work, Mercedes would show each and every one of them why she would one day be known as the Stone Giant of the East. Soon enough, they found the study, where Fortain was waiting for them, unlocking the door with the key she had stolen earlier. Jorah, however, lagged behind. He listened as the king and his advisors talked about the delivery. They spoke of it as though it was a weapon. It seemed whatever had been delivered, they were also given the means to make more of it. Jorah felt an odd twinge in his heart, as though magic itself was trying to warn him of something. He turned and ran towards the study. Despite not being a classically trained arcanist, he knew that feeling, and knew it came with ill tidings. Soon enough, the four reconvened in the study, Fortain staring at 2 wooden crates lying on their side, and one far larger crate standing straight up. Something felt wrong. Mercedes didn't hesitate to open the 2 laying straight down, using her sword to lever the lids off. One contained hundreds of potion bottles, sickly greens, purples, azures, and browns. The other contained extremely heavy armor, with runes and magic symbols carved into them, magic stones set in the metal, and one very, very large mace. Fortain and Jorah just stared at the standing box. Wilhelm was right. They knew it when they saw it. the painted green lion sigil sitting in the middle of the wooden plank, practically begging them to open the box. The four began debating what to do. They doubted they would be able to get it out of a window like this, and as Mercedes rocked the box on its edges, she confirmed it did weigh 21 stone. This would not be easy. They loaded their packs with the armor and the potions, Mercedes lifting the heavy mace and affixing it to her hip with multiple straps. Fortaine and Jorah began to secure the ropes, Fortaine's deft hands making quick knots, while Jorah used the magic of the wind to curl and bind the ropes to the corner of the crate. A rat came scurrying into the study and began to squeak frantically at Jorah. The guards Mercedes had taken down were waking up. There was no more time to be wasted, dragging the crate, finding an open window, lining up on each rope in sets of 2, and lifting it out into the night air. An alarm bell began to ring in the courtyard. Jorah started to use the magic of the wind again to aid in lowering the box in a controlled fashion. As soon as they felt it touch the ground, Fortaine wove out of the group and slid down one of the ropes until she hit the courtyard. As soon as Fortaine reached the bottom, the remaining 3 began to run, finding places to hide and ways out of the building. Helene was ignored by the guards, a simple servant girl passing in the night. The only guard who stopped her immediately regretted it as she began to loudly cry that the king had been killed, and he let her go. A drastic lie, but an efficient one nonetheless. Mercedes stole down the stairs towards the back of the castle, causing as much of a ruckus as she could as she ambushed any and all guards she could find with ruthless attacks and speed, throwing dirt into their eyes and kicking below their belts as she found her way to the servants' entrance. Jorah couldn't teleport again, and his magical energies were running thin, so he headed towards a high tower. Once he got there, he fell from the window and bid the wind to slow his descent, humming and whispering the song of the breeze as it carried him gently towards the ground. Not so much magic as begging the wind to help him. And help him it did. Fortaine just stared at the crate. She was out of sight for now, but something about this just didn't feel right. She took out her dagger and pried the crate open. As the wood split apart, the scent of amaranth and dry dirt wafted into the air. She pulled the lid, and behind it stood a hulking man. Tattoos covering almost every inch of his flesh, runes and symbols. On his forehead was a red symbol that painted over his eyes. Fortaine wasn't around for the cataclysm, but all Easterners know the stories. This was a bulwark, a massive, mutated soldier whose body was warped and grown using evil magic. When a bulwark was made, they became entirely dependent on their mage, a slave. Some bulwarks escaped captivity, others died when they killed their masters. These days there are a few bulwarks who have a willing allyship with their mage built on trust rather than magic. Others, who have killed their masters, now just wander the world alone. Jorah fell into a panic when he saw the man, knowing just how well and truly doomed they were if this man woke up. Once Helene and Mercedes arrived, their reaction was very much the same. Not only was the king about to use magic to fight the demons, but he was going to use a subjugated slave soldier. Not only did Wilhelm send them after a massive, unstoppable beast of a soldier, but he did not tell them. They could bring the bulwark to Wilhelm, but who knows what he would use it for, although they were sure as the stars that they couldn't leave him here. They laid the box back down and started roughly dragging it across the ground. Jorah's Star Watcher's potion had worn out, and his magic had left him, so all they could do was drag. They hauled the bulwark to the beach using a small back gate that no one was watching, and they all sat on the sand. As they tried to catch their breath, Jorah looked at the massive man. The red symbol on his head was a piece of Arca-speak. an ancient magician language that contains power in every symbol. This symbol meant sleep and rebirth. Jorah rationalized that whoever broke the painted seal would awaken and bind the bulwark. They talked, the four of them, about what to do with their new problem. Fortaine couldn't stomach giving the bulwark to Wilhelm. There are tales from the wars of bulwarks charging through walls, tearing demons and monsters from the sky with just one hand, battling hordes of men. A man like Wilhelm could only want to do evil things with a weapon so powerful. Jorah refused to break the seal. To bind the bulwark to any one of them would be wrong. The binding is not of friendship in most cases. It's blind obedience. Many bulwarks killed their masters and died immediately from heartbreak and rage. No one should have that kind of power over another. Mercedes and Helene had simply resolved themselves to go along with whatever plan the other two had come up with, instead staring at the moon and flirting with one another as they watched the ocean on this cloudless night. After an hour of discussion, Jorah and Fortaine decided to return the armor and the weapon to Wilhelm. They would smash the potions needed to create a new bulwark, and tell Wilhelm that they just weren't able to get the man himself out of the building, rationalizing that even if he hired a new team to go get the bulwark, he would be far, far away from there. It seemed a fair plan, but it was missing an important piece. They still didn't know what to do with the 19.5-hand tall man who weighed 21 stone. Leaving him in slumber felt foolish. Breaking the seal felt cruel. Jorah took the equipment and wandered back into the city to give it back to Wilhelm. Fortaine laid the box down in the sand, and with Mercedes and Helene, they pushed it into the sea. As it began to sink from the weight, the paint washed off of the bulwark's face, and he awoke. The man walked out of the salty seawater and looked at the three women who had just pushed him, and then he knelt down. They all worried that he may have been bonded to one of them, but he simply thanked them for freeing him. He was freed by the sea, and therefore he belonged to the sea. He sat with them on the beach and told them his tale before wandering off into the wilderness alone to find peace. Jorah was given only 120 crowns to split between the three of them, but that was more than enough. They went their separate ways, and that was that. Helene and Mercedes founded a bandit clan together in the woods. Jorah used his earnings to buy his way into a mage's college up north, where he could truly learn to appreciate the gift. And Fortaine began to run her mother's brothel, using the money to clean the place up. And that is where this story ends for now. I have heard stories of Mercedes and Helene, and I have met the bulwark named Rigel who lives in the wild alone. But this particular tale simply ends. I met Fortaine in her mother's brothel, where she happily told me this story. She told me to never judge someone by their career, but by their actions within it. A thief may steal, and an assassin may kill, but their reasoning and heart should always be present. Some people are monsters for the sake of it. Some do evil acts just to survive. She was an interesting person, but she was kind, and even told me where to meet Rigel the Bulwark in the eastern woods. I hope to meet them again one day, both of them. Tomorrow night, we will talk about the demons brought by the cataclysm, a grand battle fought against them, and some of the heroes who stood bravely and developed the techniques we use to fight demons now. I have a tome of tales from every nation to share with you all. I have seen many monsters, many heroes. I have learned of the magic offered by the goddess, and the magic humans can conjure for themselves. I have seen warfare, and I have tales of peace. I cannot wait to tell them all to you. Good night, and thank you.
Legends of Lorelei is a narrative fiction podcast by Livewire Multimedia Stories. The Bard is voiced and created by Gwen Fullman, who can be found as @Gwen_Fullman on Instagram. Written by Gwen Fullman. Co-executive produced by Gwen Fullman and Elizabeth Fullman, with music by Gwen Fullman. If you enjoyed what you just listened to, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/Livewire Multimedia Stories. There, you will get exclusive access to early episodes and fun perks like access to polls and our Discord server, where we collaborate on projects and resources, share fan art, and just hang out. If you like this project and would like to learn more about it or any of our other projects, please follow us on social media. We are on Tumblr @Livewire Media, on Instagram @Livewire Multimedia, and on YouTube @Livewire Multimedia Stories. But really, the best way to support us is to share this with a friend. Thank you for listening.